And thanks for staying with us. Still conversations right here on News Central TV. Today we focus on Uganda, where the 2026 general elections have unfolded under intense scrutiny and mounting controversy. Now, early results from the national tally show long-time incumbent President Yoweri Museveni commanding a significant lead, while opposition leader Robert Kyagulanyi, widely known as Bobi Wine, trails far behind in the provisional count. Now, observers describe a high-stakes contest that has been shaped not just by ballots, but by an internet blackout, technical glitches at polling stations, and allegations of irregularities from both sides. Now, this pivotal moment, seen by many as a test of Uganda's democratic resilience after nearly 4 decades of Museveni's rule, raises pressing questions about electoral integrity and the future of the political competition in the country. Our correspondent, Bongani Siziba, has a report on this.
Began queuing early to cast their votes for the president and members of the parliament. While polling officially opened at 7 a.m., some stations reported delays due to technical issues. Citizens waited patiently, eager to exercise their democratic rights.
In our country, we have been with one president from 1986 up to now, one president. So we need change to get another government so that to see which that government, what will do for us?
First of all, the government is doing nothing for us. Like we have poor roads, poor education, poor health, because the hospitals don't have medicine, like for real. Yeah, we just need change.
In Chiaruka, President Yoweri Museveni voted in his home district, praising the new technology introduced to the elections.
So when I started checking by 8, 9, people started ringing me. The machines are working in a few places, in other places they are not working. So the Electoral Commission proposed, and I had to support it, because people have gathered for money from 7 that will vote manually, because it was not correct for people to just go home. But the machine works.
Meanwhile, in Kampala, supporters cheered as opposition leader Bobi Wine approached the ballot box at Freedom Square. Despite the ongoing internet shutdown, he urged citizens to vote in their large numbers.
But nevertheless, we encourage the people of Uganda to vote and observe the election. I still call upon all of you that have not voted to rush to the polling stations and vote. Your vote is your voice, and you must not allow anybody to suffocate it.
Voting continued with minor technical hiccups. Observers noted some low turnout due to frustrations of biometric systems, but the process remained largely peaceful, reflecting the will of the people. As Ugandans progress through this crucial election, many remain hopeful for a better future. In Kampala, Uganda, for News Central, Bongani Siziba.
Joining me now to have a conversation is Akpobi Elvis, Executive Director, Godwin Toko, Deputy Team Leader, Agora Center for Research, and Abolu Michael B., a Foreign Policy Analyst. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. So what we have now in terms of the facts is we have about 25% of the votes being counted right now as we speak. President Museveni is in the lead right now, and Bobi Wine, who is the major opposition, has been placed under house arrest. Let me start with you, Godwin. In your assessment, how transparent has the Electoral Commission been in the tallying and transmission of results, particularly from contested polling areas?
Yeah, thank you. So first, we need to look at the fact that the campaigns were marred by a lot of irregularities from the state side. Bobi Wine was stopped from campaigning several times. So many of his parliamentary candidates were denominated well after nomination, and then the ruling party candidates were declared unopposed. By the time I came here, I think it was about 17 that had already been declared unopposed. And then yesterday on the election day, we saw the first problem was that voting delayed in several opposition strongholds. Now, that is not unique to the 2026 elections. That has been a pattern that has played out over the last two elections, 2021 as well, and then 2016 elections. But what is telling there is the fact that these tend to be the case in opposition strongholds, and these ironically are the areas closest to the headquarters of the Electoral Commission in Kampala. So yesterday, so many of them received ballot papers late. To their credit, if there is credit at all, the Electoral Commission later tried to make amends by saying that voting could extend for an hour. But in some of these places, voting had delayed for as much as 5 hours. And as you heard from the report, the president himself was acknowledging the fact that so many of the BBVK, that is the biometric voter verification kit, the machines that they said would weed out the rigging, failed to work. That meant that people went back to voting in a way that is manual, which meant that a lot of time was taken. So the whole exercise yesterday, it was an election, yes, but there were so many irregularities about it, the things that could be potential grounds for electoral petitions or even disputes about the election when the time comes. Now, as of today, the Commission has announced several, I think they've had about four different tallies coming in. The last that I just checked about an hour before I came here put Museveni at about 74% and Bobi Wine at about 21%, with Museveni having about 6 million and Bobi Wine about 1.7 million. Now, the question people are asking is, where are these votes coming from? Because every now and then the chairperson just comes on TV and says, the latest results we have show this. Now, people would want to know, like, which region of Uganda is this from? Which district are these from? And which polling station are these from? Then perhaps they could compare and contrast with what they have and then have a better understanding. So there are those disputes that have already manifested.
Let me come to you now, B. Michael. What is your take on allegations, because they have been made, they've been raised by oppositions regarding electoral malpractice, including, votes manipulation and, procedural issues?
Yeah, you see, you can't prove exam cheating if the script locked away. You need to, if there's a case about examination malpractice, then you need to actually check the records you have. Maybe if there's been a CCTV or something, or the script of the student. There has to be something to work with. So these allegations, they follow a familiar pattern in Uganda, as my other guest said. And it's a playbook that keeps repeating itself. I mean, the entire system. Structure in Uganda has been bought, from the judiciary to the legislature. It's been totally bought. So I don't know what exactly that can be transformational to bring about a real change in Uganda. If votes don't really count, some claims are credible, all right. Like the delays and disruptions of the process, they're credible. But others, they lack the evidence due to restricted access. When international observers are not allowed to do their job, or the internet is shut down, whereby citizens cannot tally the information that is being released by the Electoral Commission with what they have, with people on ground, and agents are being intimidated. I mean, so it calls for concern. Whether there's really a need for an election in such a country, where a place where it seems like is a monarchical democracy, whereby it's actually more like a monarchy, autocracy, but democracy is being used as a smokescreen for such governance. It's quite unfortunate that this has been happening. It's been so cemented in the system. If not, it wouldn't have happened for decades. Something that's been happening for decades has become institutionalized, and it's not good for Africa. When you look at Uganda as a country compared to other Eastern African nations, they're far behind in a lot of ways, and everything rises and falls on leadership. And it's proven that Museveni government is not working for the Ugandan people, and they desperately need a change. And I hope they'll get it someday.
All right, joining us right now, we have an African affairs analyst, David Matsanga. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Matsanga. I'd like to ask you, to what extent the reports of, missing or detained opposition polling agents affect the credibility of the electoral process happening in Uganda?
First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to. I can see my younger man Toko there, and I think Toko will tell you I'm one of the senior opposition critic from 1978, 82, we started having discussions and opposition. Besigye and Bobi Wine are younger people in the field. But let me come to the point you are talking about. The results that are coming are provisional results by the Electoral Commission. And if you have ever observed elections anywhere, I've observed over 62 elections worldwide, including the elections of East Timor in Indonesia. What the chairman of the Electoral Commission is doing now is, after all this up, he's gonna go back. When he's finally announcing who has taken the presidency, he will announce from each tallying center or tallying unit. I don't know why people are mistaken that you know very well the tallying is coming from the district to the main tallying center. It's now provisional until when we finally now everything is in, or the percentage passes, it has passed a bit of what you think, whatever remaining vote behind does not matter, is when the chairman is going to announce district by district that brought Chagulanyi got this, Museveni got this, spoiler votes this, again like that, elect like that. That is going to happen. So I think people are already, I warned this younger man a long time ago. I've been one of the few people, in fact, who has told Bobi Wine openly, and who has told the Uganda opposition. Some of us have been there longer. I've been in exile for 40 years, opposing, bringing political parties. These political parties, Toko is enjoying it today. It's Matanga in London, who stood up and said, no, let's have political parties back. Besigye did not like them. Bob was not born. Now, the point here is this vote in Kampala this time, there were, yes, there's BVR machines. I was in Nigeria. I saw the BVR machines collapsing in so many places. Machines are machines. But generally, for example, take my county. My county is the only one of the counties outside Uganda that voted Bobi Wine. So did the NRM still there? No. Baptist Nambeshe is my brother. Look at my head and look at the Nambeshe. We come from the same house. So did the NRM still there? No. This thing of just running around international media to tell people there is running, there's rigging like this, it brings more chaos and killings and beatings and demonstrations that destroy property. The truth is this. The chairman is announcing all collective results. Tomorrow he will be specific where these votes came from, until he finishes all the 72,000 polling stations and collectively all districts.
Let me butt in here, Mr. Matanga. Let me now bring this question to you, Godwin, because he raised a valid point, which is something that has been listed as one of the issues at this particular elections. Now, how has the technical challenges, especially when it comes to failures of biometric voter verification systems, impacted voter access and the integrity of this election? Godwin.
Yeah, so yesterday, after several of these machines failed, and this is not the first time these machines are failing, they've been failing for several elections, and in this particular election, the money that was spent to purchase them is about 100 billion Ugandan shillings. Ugandan shilling is about 10 times less than Nigerian currency for context. So after they failed, the Electoral Commission came out and issued a statement, ironically, on Twitter, which is one of the social media platforms Ugandans can't access because internet is not accessible in Uganda, saying that that statement was effectively directing polling officials across the country to then use the manual voting system that they've always used. The problem with that is that because of the lack of the flow of information that was delayed by the internet, there are several polling stations where people went to vote and said, the Pope presented the statement, and that was the first time the polling officials were reading them. Many times they even disputed it. So it's not just that the voting, the biometric, the BBVK failed. It's that it failed and then impacted the outcome of the election in a very, very negative way. For many people, Uganda is a country where most people live hand to mouth. The chapati guy makes chapatis and then he survives for that day. So if I am going to spend 5 hours at a polling station, if I got there at 6 a.m. in the morning, and by say 11 I haven't voted, that is a half day gone without me being productive, which is half day of not me not earning my bread for the day, because I have to earn it per day. So many people went out. So that's why you're seeing that already. And to just correct Masanga, it's about 70% of the votes that have already been announced, the provisional results, because the voter turnout was very, very low. I see the figures are putting it at about 46%. So yes, it's possible that complaining can then lead to problems. But talking about the problems is not the problem. The problem is that Electoral Commission in Uganda could have done better. I've seen even the president sometimes complain about the Electoral Commission in Uganda. I have seen ruling party MPs complain about the Electoral Commission in Uganda. They had 5 years to prepare for this, and by all accounts, it seems like they did a very, very shoddy job. There is room for improvement in the future, but there is also room for holding people accountable, because if you have an exercise of organizing elections and you spend 5 years and tens of millions of dollars and you don't get that right for a country that is like Uganda, that is so young and people need to exercise their right, then there is a problem with you.
Let me come to you now, B and Michael. How would you, because when we look at elections now, right, security forces play a huge role. As we speak right now, it's reported that Bobi Wine has been placed under house arrest. So that means he's surrounded by security forces. How would you assess the role and the conduct of security forces during the voting and the counting, particularly in opposition strongholds?
Yeah, I'll say they've been quite selective in their operation, and it's quite unfortunate because security forces, they're meant to be as neutral as possible. They must first see themselves as Ugandans, protecting the Ugandans as irrespective of their political affiliation. But that's not what we are seeing, and it's not something that just happened, during voting or after. It's something that's the intimidation has been even before election day. It's been during the rallies, on the run up of the campaign. It's like having a candidate having a rally and the police are not stationed at the opposition's rally. It's quite unfair, because anything could happen and it's going to affect everyone, irrespective of it could affect everyone irrespective of their political affiliation. I feel they've been heavy-handed and intimidating, to say the least. And security presence, went beyond, the neutral enforcement that they're meant to show. Opposition's area, because of this kind of unprofessional behavior, opposition definitely will feel targeted and enraged and powerless. And the effect of this is that they will devise their own ways of securing themselves. Maybe they'll hire like a private security agency or something to protect themselves. So it's very important that the security forces, they first of all understand that, see, we are Ugandans, we are all Ugandans. We owe a duty of care to every Ugandan, irrespective of their political affiliation. But then it's like Uganda, you will pay the piper to its tunes. Like I said earlier, that the system has been bought, from the security to to the parliamentarians, to you name it. It's been to executive, legislative, judiciary. They're all for the current administration. It seems more like an autocracy taking place. And when the system has been the corrupt system has been institutionalized, it's very difficult to tear down, and it's quite unfortunate that security forces have been quite heavy-handed and it's been dating.
Let me come back to you, Mr. Matsanga. You're one person who has observed elections across Africa. You've been to Nigeria before. Tell me, when it comes to your own assessment, were domestic and international election observers granted enough access to polling stations at this election?
Yes. I don't know whether you are hearing.
I can hear you.
Yes, in Uganda, access to the polling stations. your former.
Okay, looks like we're having an audio issue with Mr. Masanga. Let me bring the question to you, Godwin. What's your take on how domestic and international election observers were granted access to polling stations?
So first, the fact that internet is off means it's very hard to confirm, to relay results, or to even observe the elections generally. So if observer teams like COMESA come to Uganda normally, they have people spread across the country, and then those people send declaration of result forms, they're in touch with each other, and that is how they can pick from the sample of the polling stations and districts they've chosen the credibility of the election. But more importantly, 3 days to the elections, several organizations in Uganda, civil society organizations that do work around the elections, were issued letters of suspension of their operations. And that unfortunately includes organizations like Center for Constitutional Governance, the NGO Forum. So many of them, just 2 days before the elections, as they were preparing to go and observe the elections, they found that they were actually no longer operating, their bank accounts frozen. So that has also affected local Ugandan civil society from observing the elections. And yes, prior to that, several civil society organizations applied to observe the elections because it is a process. It takes about 2 months to get the accreditation to observe the elections. And I can report without any fear of contradiction that from what I saw, it's about 95% of them that were denied the certificates to observe the elections. So it's been really, really hard for them to observe the elections. They've done as much as they can. The organization I work at has a team of journalists who are on the ground. We are connecting with them via direct phone calls to try and see how things are happening, especially reports of human rights violations, like the reports of murder, deaths, the shootings by police that are reported to have happened yesterday in Butambala, now confirmed, Luweero and other places. Yes, but to go back to your point, because of the lack of internet, because of the closure of civil society organization, and because of the fact that so many organizations didn't get the accreditation to observe the elections, it became really, really hard.
All right, you're watching Conversations. We're going on a quick break. When we return, there's more. Conversations continues, and of course, I still have my guests with me, Godwin Toko. I also have with me Michael B. And we have been we've been having a conversation as regards the Ugandan presidential election. Let me come to you now, Mr. Michael B. Bolu Michael B. Can we confirm if there were any safeguards put in place to ensure that there were any manual voting procedures complied, with electoral laws and international standard?
All right. So I think a person that probably was on the field would be able to, confirm. But based on precedents, I can speak based on precedent that usually the safeguards they do exist on paper, but they're actually quite weak in practice. The oversights depend on the polling agents who are now, largely missing. That's the effect of intimidation. They're being arrested. They're not on ground. Imagine their safety rules without inspectors. That's how it's like. When compliance is very questionable, when there are no umpires and people on ground to actually verify what's going on as regards their party or their district or anything that may concern them. So when there are no observers and things like that, the government of the day, they have the liberty to do anything they want, to maybe fingerprint, to do whatever they want to do, which is not good. It just makes the election a sham and a waste of time of people who actually want genuine change, people who left their jobs or took a leave to get to the polling station, the person who probably isn't feeling too well, gets under the sun. People have sacrificed for their change. And these electoral officers and even the security operatives must understand that they're forced to use Ugandans, and that at the end of the day, they are civilians. They are not paying a different price in the market for tomato or whatever because they are security forces. They do feel they will eventually get their uniforms off and go back to their families and sleep on their bed as civilians. That's the reality. They're not paying anything extra. They're not paying any extra, a different price for tomato or food in the market because they're security operative. So they too must understand that the change that if they do their work appropriately and they see to the change in their country, they're actually doing that for their children, not just for themselves. And I hope that after the election, even during this season, they will sit down and reflect on their actions and whether it really makes sense or is meaningful to maybe rig election for government that is not working for them.
I'll let me come to you now, Mr. David Matanga. How much would you say this voting process aligns with electoral laws in Uganda and even international standards?
Lost you there, but I am here now. First of all, on the question of observers. Observers are not participants. I want Toko to understand that. Don't be participant. If you are an observer, a monitor, you write an independent mind, your report, whether it is you like Museveni or you like Kyagulanyi or you write an independent. That is what we teach in school. You don't become a participant. Most of the observers that Uganda government blocked, some were participants, some were already taken sides. You don't need to go and observe elections in a place where you have already taken sides. We have 7 observers in Kampala today. The Commonwealth, African Union, Russia, China, Britain, America, all these are here. IGAD, East African Community, they are here. ECOWAS, SADC, they are there. Let's not talk lies to the world. 2, on the question of what Toko is talking about, those are complaints for court. Our Constitution of 1995 is very clear. If you feel there are complaints that have emerged, that the chairman is reading things from nowhere, from planet Earth, go to court. Don't go to your house and tell people to come out to destroy property. That is the problem. There is a difference there. I have seen so many elections. I was in Nigeria for your last elections. 94 million registered voters. Do you know how many turned up? Only 26 million point something. 68 million disappeared to Atlantic Ocean. And in some places, it was worse. It was a battlefield. I saw it during the Tinubu election. I was in Nigeria. So I know everything about elections. Some of these things, we should not be too much activism to destroy a country. Yes, we disagree with President Museveni, but there are certain things we must agree. That the Electoral Commission today, Toko, has done something different. Today, the voting, if Museveni wanted to cheat, he would have cheated in my constituency, where John Baptiste Nambeshe passed with 27,000 votes. Why didn't he go there in Manjia constituency, where I was born? Toko, you know that. So, this election, let's agree with you and let's tell the world the truth. And I'm telling you the truth is this. Opposition in Uganda is fragmented. Bobi Wine does not want to bring others together. They will never defeat Museveni. And you are lying, even if you bring Angel Gabriel down here. This gentleman from Etwani speaking what? That is activism. That's not election monitoring and observation. When you go to an observe election, you observe with dignity. Write your report. If the president hates you, fine. If Kyagulanyi hates you, fine. But some of the observers go into countries, some internal local observers write in favor of opposition. Some write in favor of government. That is not what we call election observation.
Let me button here, Mr. Matsanga. Let me bring my next question to you, Godwin. Now, there was an internet blackout 2 days to the election. What implication does this internet shutdown have for electoral transparency, media reporting, and even the public trust in the outcome of the results?
Thank you. Yes, just a second to say that I am not telling people to go to the streets and ban anything. People who lose elections can rightly go to court and petition the result, but that doesn't mean that then elections should not be credible. The fact that I can go and report a robber who robs my house doesn't mean that the police should let robbers come to my place and rob it. The police should stop the robbers and people shouldn't rob me in the first instance. Going to court is an option that I can hold if that happens, but that shouldn't be the norm. Now, to your question, it's the digital age, really. Everything in the world today really revolves around the internet. And you see, the problem is that this points to the nature of Ugandan elections that is very, very troubling. Nigeria had elections, and Mr. Masanga keeps referring to Nigeria's elections. Nigeria has its problems. We shouldn't pick one country with a problem and then say they have problems so we can have problems. And with all due respect to him, so if Nigeria had elections and they had internet on, Kenya has elections, they have internet on, what's it about the internet? It's just a medium of transferring information. If there is false information being transferred, the Ugandan government has the infrastructure, the architecture, and the resources to counter any such information that is transferred. And that is, of course, not to say that false information cannot proliferate over the internet. It can, but there are better ways to handle it. We live in a country where students learn online. So if you shut down the internet, there are students who are not learning now. The rest of the world is moving on fine. So you're putting a very huge cost. You're selling so much of a country's economy and so much for the price of a song, literally, because you're turning off the internet. So the internet question is a very, very central question, because there are even cases of human rights violations that right now cannot be reported. There are cases of places where you need, say, medical support, and the best way to get the information, maybe contact an ambulance, is through the internet, the system that they use as the ambulances that coordinate in Uganda, and they're not able to do that right now. So the shutdown of the internet is very, very troubling. It's very, very problematic. And it's not just about the election. It's because now everything is done over the internet. Even collection of taxes in Uganda is done over the internet. So to put it plainly, it is going to be, and I know that in the last election, some group of civil society went to court and the court disagreed with their petition over the shutdown of the internet during an election. But looking at it from just the angle of a normal country, it really takes us so many decades back. It makes monitoring the election hard. It creates rooms for uncertainty. It creates room for dispute of the election and everything. So I think it's really one of those things that we need to get, we need to move away from, really.
Let me come back to you, Mr. Matsanga, because you talked about the courts now. What legal mechanisms are available to contest the election results, and how effective have these mechanisms been historically in Uganda?
First of all, I want to correct one impression here. My brother is talking from Kampala. Which internet are you using?
I don't know if you're sure that I'm talking from Kampala.
I don't know. I can see on the on the screen.
Yeah, it's not disputed that internet is shut down in Kampala.
Toko, I know you, but that is not the problem. Let me answer his question. It was said from Kampala. I am talking from London, so I saw it on the screen. If you are not from Kampala, fine. Then you are not. It's a problem. I'm not a supporter of closure of people's human rights. That's okay. If your human rights depends on internet, that's okay. But some people misuse this internet to call others to come to the streets to destroy even the food, the loans. Our parents go and borrow money in the bank, and then you find people coming to the streets destroying the whole thing. There is a way. Uganda has put mechanism. 1995 Constitution has, let me tell you, 3-tier systems. One, after the election is done, you have, Toko will tell you, we have 14 days or something like 3 months to sort out. We can go and say President Museveni was not duly elected. You are telling the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court looks at your argument. You bring your lawyers. We have systems of correcting a bad election. The problem is whether these recommendations are worked on is a second question. That is not mine. It is up to the people who are under that Ugandan situation. The thing is that every election in Uganda has ended in court. And one of the papers that I'm working on as a researcher in my other work is, why do we have 21 million people registered to vote? Then you have 7 judges sitting to nullify an election or to validate an election, then you have killed universal suffrage. That's a mistake most African countries do. You saw yours in Nigeria. All the judges wrote the same language after the two parties went to court. Waste of time, waste of money, waste of everything. So why don't we do one? Why don't you do the South African model? African countries need to look at other models to avoid the court, because the court has 7 judges. Some of the judges, like in Uganda, are selected by the government, the same government. Kenya, the judges are independent, I put on TV. They can make a decision. So for me, historically, Uganda has ended up in court. Every election in Uganda has ended up in court. The worst one was 1980, which ended up, President Museveni disagreed and went to the bush to fight, and eventually you know what has happened.
Let me come to you. Let me butt in here, Mr. Musanga. Let me ask my next question to B. Michael. Right now, I'll ask the question to B. Michael. How might the outcome of this election, because it's quite important, how will the outcome of this election influence Uganda's democratic institutions and, you know, the governance framework moving forward?
All right, the outcome of the election, you know, might actually make, you know, Ugandans and the international community question whether democratic institutions actually do exist. You know, because this is a system that's been in place for decades, and it seems to just be repeating and perpetuating itself. And as the years go by, decades go by, they sharpen these skills and system manipulating election results. It's basically one player controlling the entire team strategy, which is not good for the country. It reinforces executive dominance, which is deeply entrenched in Uganda's governance framework today. You know, institutions, they remain weak relative to the presidency. It seems that the presidency is probably the most powerful, that called the shots and all that. But there's a need for checks and balances. They need to understand that, you know, when the other arms of government are functional, you know, when the legislature, the judiciary, they're working, it helps the executive in doing their jobs as well. If the executive are effective, it helps the judiciary to do their job as well. It's for the benefit of every Ugandan. It's for the benefit of every arm of government. But when the systems are weak, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. You know, so the outcome of the election only makes the momentum of reforms to be slower. You know, and you start to ask questions like, okay, when is this change really going to come? And what I'm afraid of is that this might significantly further damage, you know, the standing of Uganda in the eyes of the international community. Or, you know, they kind of be like, okay, there's really not much we can do about this country. Maybe not much resources to even fight over it and stuff like that. And you know, you can be a small country, you can be a country with not so many resources, but have a good reputation in terms of governance. We make Ghana a reference, we make Rwanda a reference in East Africa. It's not like they have all the resources, it's not like they have all the infrastructure in place, but their system, their structure are things that we can point at as a model for other African countries to follow. And I wish Uganda could be that country, because there's such amazing people, wonderful people, great people. It's just unfortunate that the governance and the governance framework of the system there in terms of the democracy is not really working, in my opinion.
Well, let me come to you now, Godwin. What message, because we have quite a number of young voters in Uganda, what messages does this electoral process send to young voters, especially first-time participants in Uganda's political system?
Yeah, but if you may, let me just say one thing about the judiciary and petitions in Uganda.
Okay, you have to be fast about it because we're pressed for time.
Yes, I'm going to be very fast. The court announced in 2016, the court ordered that there should be reforms in the way election petitions are filed and elections are conducted. Those reforms have never been put in place. The judiciary in Uganda is often ranked as one of the most corrupt institutions, not just by foreign entities, but even by the Ugandan IGG's office, the Inspectorate of Governance. So you can go to court. In the last election, Bobi Wine went to court and withdrew his petition because he saw no solution there. And one of the judges has since gone to the US in exile, and she says the court was influenced to issue the decision it did. Now, to the young people in Uganda and this election. So Uganda has a population that is with a median age of just 16 years. the 80% of Ugandans were born under one president, Yoweri Museveni, including myself. Now, what that means is that a lot of them have gone to the polls and they keep voting. And it seems like the election is a choreographed, a ceremony of coronating President Museveni. So many of them now have voter apathy. Like I said, the projection puts this particular election with a voter turnout of just 46%. Most of those who didn't vote are the young people. So it becomes just another place of another event that leads to disenchantment, that leads to disillusionment for the many millions of Ugandan young people. And that is very, very unfortunate to have a population of young, energetic, innovative young people who get disappointed every 5 years to this level.
Well, let me come to you now, Mr. Matsanga now. Now, when it comes to electoral reforms, if any, which of them are necessary to, strengthen electoral credibility and, public confidence in the future Ugandan elections?
Yes, we need electoral reforms. And one of the, if I were President Museveni, in the next coming 5 years, of course, he's going to take the 5 years. He has won. He has got almost 7 million votes now on the screen. When you look, I think he's going to be the winner tomorrow. But if I were the one, I would introduce serious electoral reforms. One of the reforms that I wish Ugandans to have, so that they vote and go home. Let's go back to parliamentary system of voting, of system of governance. A man who has the highest number of MPs forms the government. The presidential American style is the one causing us all these fights, killings, killings, beatings, whatever it is. If we go to the presidential, to the parliamentary system, that's one of the reforms that we shall tell President Museveni between now and 2031, that let's go back, let's try parliamentary system. South Africa votes, goes home, listens to the radio, the results come, proportional representation. We need that. 2, Africa needs to avoid the question, it looks like one man, one vote is not working anymore. Africa needs to go back to the drawing table, like China went back 40 years ago, and they looked at Communist Party not working. And one man, one vote elections in Africa working. I think no.
All right, Mr. Masanga, I know you have quite a lot of suggestions as regards electoral reforms, but we have to wrap things up now. We're really pressed for time. But thank you, gentlemen, for having this conversation with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me late, but invite me next time more, faster.
We'll definitely do that. All right, as we continue to follow the unfolding election results in Uganda, the world watches not just a contest of votes, but a deeper contest over the principles of transparency, fairness, and political renewal. Whether these elections usher in continuity or herald change, the reverberations will be felt far beyond the ballot boxes, in the lives of Ugandans, in regional stability across East Africa, and in the enduring global debate of the meaning of credible democratic practice. And that's all for today on The Conversation. Catch up on missed episodes on our News Central TV YouTube channel. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Go TV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Till I come your way again, I am Chiwate Onyema.